Okay, we are trying something a little different today. Doing some office hours, answering some questions. This was a little last second, so I don't know if anyone else will show up live for this, but we'll try it and we'll improve it. I've got a list of questions that people have already asked on Twitter, so let's get into it. Okay, Gremlin Chess, two questions. How do you overcome focus and fatigue at the board? I've noticed my mistakes fall largely into either I am tired slash lost focus, or I misunderstood a feature of the position. The latter, I know how to fix, the former, much less so. And how do you study the early middle game? Um, okay, so first one, how do you overcome focus and fatigue at the board? I think it's a good question. I think it makes sense to connect focus and fatigue because focus is focus is tiring. So when you have to focus for a long time, you become fatigued. Um, so how do you deal with that? One thing that comes to mind is for focus to be sustainable, it can't be too effortful. I kind of learned that from meditation. Like for a while, I was using this meditation app called Headspace, where they sort of teach you the techniques. But the point is, if you have a very effortful, intense focus, you can't possibly sustain it for that long. Like in a chess game, if you're playing a classical over the board game and it lasts 4 hours, you can't, there's no way you could be exerting maximum effort and focus continuously for 4 hours. That would be like running a marathon and your strategy is to sprint the entire 26 miles or whatever it is. You should, even if you want to do it, your body like won't do it. Um, so I think you need to find at the same time, clearly being focused is important to perform well in chess. You have to find a way, a sort of lighter, less effortful focus. And I think in a long over the board game, you also need to take some breaks. Not, that can be walking around away from the board. Some people like do that, some people don't. But even just allowing yourself to relax a little bit, like during your opponent's move. So finding a way to be both focused and relaxed at the same time, which sort of sounds like a paradox, but is possible, and that's a skill unto itself. Um, Also, I think all the things around, outside of sort of chess ability or chess knowledge, but how you prepare and sort of show up to tournaments. So, are you sleeping well? Are you eating well? Are you exercising? Are you in decent shape? It seems like most chess players don't take that very seriously, but I think if you want to score as well as you can, you should. So, I know Noel Studer has a post about this. He likes to bring like his favorite tea, like a foam roll or snacks to a tournament, especially tournaments here in the United States. Often are very sort of packed schedules. You don't necessarily have a lot of time to eat. So I think it's a great idea to have like a few snacks or something in your backpack. So if everything falls apart, you at least can eat something. Okay, I think that's so that was question one, focus and fatigue. Question two, how do you study the early middle game? Yeah, kind of a big question. I mean, I think that gets into the early middle game is definitely connected to opening study as well, because early and middle game that's sort of late opening as well. So you want to know typical plans and ideas in the position. Actually, I think the next question is quite related to this. So let's get into that. So the next one is from Nova Chess Guy is I'm on move 10 to 12 of some QGD or Queen's Gambit or King's Indian line. Both sides are solid pieces developed and well defended. Where to go from here? How do I think of a plan? So this one was it's a little confusing to me since it says Queen's Gambit or King's Indian decline or a King's Indian defense, which are two different like really different openings. Um, and there's not a specific position. So I think what the question is getting at is really planning more generally. Um, And I found what a lot of people seem to want is some sort of process or algorithm that you can apply to any position and come up with a good plan. Unfortunately, if that exists, I've never really found it. And I think the way good players mostly actually find plans is more by analogy with positions or games that they've seen. So to become a good player, you have to play a lot and also probably see a lot of, review a lot of other people's games. Um, so then finding a plan, I think, is less about sort of logically going through everything in the position and more about you just kind of see it and you go, oh, this position looks like this other position I saw, and in that one, this idea worked. Maybe not even consciously, but I think that's more what happens. So then, how do you develop that? Looking at model games, definitely, so if you're interested in the Queen's Gambit Declined, you need to look at games in the Queen's Gambit Declined. Potential, hopefully you have a nice selection of games. So if you're studying a book or course, and it's a good book or course, it should have examples of this. Hopefully it sort of explains a lot of the typical plans and has examples. You can also just, if you use a database, Lichess, ChessBase, or whatever, you can look at recent games. I think in this case, like, you can study you can sort of go either way of studying a small number of games deeply or studying quite a lot of games not as deeply. I think both can work for this purpose, because if you study one game deeply, you'll learn about the position. But at the same time, it can also be nice to just look at quite a lot of games, because what you're really looking for are typical maneuvers, the ones that are used over and over again. It can also be nice to have what I call like a hero in an opening, like a pretty, if you find like a 2600 grandmaster who plays the opening, you can just look at all their games in the opening and you'll get a pretty good sample of what they encountered, how they dealt with it. You can kind of build your repertoire around that. Computer can also be useful. One thing I like to do for this is play for the opposite side, meaning, so suppose I play the Queen's Gambit Declined as black. I'm wondering how a position should play out. What I like to do is I'll hide the computer lines so I can't see them, and I'll actually start playing for white. I'll just start from the position I'm interested in. I'll play sort of natural human moves, whatever, like my first thought for white, and then I'll have the computer play its top move, which you can spacebar. So basically what that allows me to see is if my opponent, who I'm sort of impersonating here by playing white, plays what to me seem like the obvious human moves, what would actually be the way to crush them? Because the computer will always crush you, of course, but you'll see how it crushes you. And you can do that many times very quickly. Okay. The next question is, what improved version of Queen's Gambit Declined or Tarish could black get from d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3 when white doesn't play knight c3? Okay, hopefully that's possible to follow. I don't know if I can. I don't think I can screen share here. So either, hopefully you're able to visualize that, but if not, again, the line is d4, d5, c4, e6, knight f3. So the point is white can bring out either knight. And what the question is getting at is, historically at least, the Queen's Gambit has been considered like maybe not quite as good or a little bit more dangerous versus the knight c3 move order. And it's not so much that black gets an improved version versus knight f3, I would say, as the knight c3 version was thought to be a little more dangerous, like in the Queen's Gambit, the exchange variation in particular. So d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, knight f6, let's say. Bishop e7 first is also possible, but knight f6, then c takes d5, e takes d5, bishop g5. And this was considered like a better version for white of the exchange Queen's Gambit Declined than the one with knight f3, because you pin the knight right away. The difference is there's a few differences, but one is that with that knight not committed to f3, um, often white would go for a setup where the knight actually ends up going to e2. So like e3, bishop d3, knight g e2, and then often later like f3, e4, trying to engineer e4 and take over the center. And so that setup is associated with Botvinnik. He won some great games with that. That was sort of feared. I never really thought that was so easy for white, and modern engines seem to think that's quite acceptable for black too. So you're seeing more top level games where black goes into that. So overall, white can get a different, possibly better version of the Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation by starting with knight c3. But the latest verdict seems to be that's fine for black as well. Yeah, lots of top games, very top level games from there recently. Christoph Salecki's Keep It Simple for Black course recommends that, which I've been using that course. I think it's very good. Okay. Nick Brinkman, what would you recommend for 20 to 30 minute per day on average training regimen for a USCF 1850? I would say you definitely want to be doing some tactics. That's kind of the first thing I like to start everyone on, because I think it's relatively straightforward and obviously sort of important. Like, tactics sort of never go out of style. If you get better at tactics, that's always going to be useful for your game. So I would suggest you can do them online on Lichess or chess.com or whatever. I think it might be a little more effective to get a book. So I think it's nice to get a tactics book. The Susan Polgar, I think it's like Chess Tactics for Champion, is one I've recommended a lot. That'd probably be a little too easy for 1850. So I know there are the Bain books. I mean, there are a million puzzle books out there. I think probably many of them are good. You want to find one. I think ideally you're probably getting like, I don't know, 80% correct, 70 to 90%, somewhere in that range. You definitely want to be solidly over 50%, because if you're like down below 50%, basically you just can't do the puzzles. They're too hard. But if you're at 100%, clearly they're too easy. So you want to be getting most of them, but not all of them, and sort of at like a moderate challenge level. So I'd probably do that a few days a week. If you're only talking about 20 to 30 minutes per day, it's going to be tough to do multiple forms of training on the same day, because just like switching between them, like getting out a different book, setting up the board, opening a different app, it's actually going to be a huge percentage of your time. So probably you're just going to be doing one thing per day. So I would think maybe tactics a few days. Definitely playing is incredible. You want to certainly have some playing in your routine. So I would say, and ideally some, if you're really strictly capped at 30 minutes per day, you're not going to be able to play very slow chess. But hopefully you could at least get in a rapid game, or like find one day per week when you could play a somewhat slower game. So I'd say maybe one day of playing, one day of analyzing that game. So what are we at? Like a few days of tactics, 2 days combined of playing or analyzing. Maybe a day of opening prep. I think some opening prep is good. You don't want to go overboard. Or you can sort of have like one project at any given time. Like maybe I'm working on rook end games or something. But yeah, 20 to 30 minutes a day. I think you absolutely can improve. Some people kind of go nuts, like trying to do so much a day, and then usually it falls apart. So I think 20 to 30 minutes a day, you definitely can improve. Don't try to do too much at once. And then the key, of course, is that you actually stick with that and keep it up for enough time, because like with anything, you won't see the improvement immediately. You have to be consistent over time. Okay. Shane says, I often find myself overwhelmed. My opponent has a big pawn rush. What should I be thinking about / looking forward to get counterplay? Okay, so pawn rush. So I guess that would be like a pawn break or perhaps a pawn storm. Well, typically when your opponent is advancing pawns, they're also creating weaknesses in their own position. So that might be something you could exploit, often sort of flanking them, like if your pieces can kind of go in around behind the pawns. It can be a bit hard to visualize that without a specific position on the board, but that can be possible. Yeah, I guess that's what I would say with, and just generally sort of keep your cool. Another thing I see frequently is like someone's opponent is attacking them, but really the position doesn't justify it, so they perhaps respond too defensively. But just because your opponent doesn't wants to attack you doesn't mean they really have the position to back it up. So I'd say stay calm and, if possible, continue to play actively and aggressively. Okay, who's your pick to win, Ding or Nepo, and why? I mean, I think it's pretty close. Like as players, they're pretty close. But at this point, I would go with Nepo. I think after obviously the match with Carlsen was really went poorly for him in the end, but it seems like he sort of learned a lot from that. It seems like he's kind of more relaxed. He's enjoying chess. He's since then his results have been really, really good. He's been playing well. They're both players who have struggled with their mental game at times, sort of uneven form. I feel like at the moment that world championship experience is going to be valuable for Nepo. He seems to be in good form. I just feel like Ding has been a little unstable. Obviously, like his A game, his best game is very strong, but he's not been able to play that consistently lately. So I guess I would give Nepo the edge there. Okay. Card Raptor Satura says, "Why am I so bad?" they sent one PG. I think given that I don't have the screen share to be able to show a game, I don't think we'll be able to analyze that game this time. Maybe I'll have to figure that out for another installment. Okay, Daniel says, "I have been a recreational player since a kid and play daily for fun. What's the best path for me to learn and improve my game? I've never read a book about chess or studied chess." Okay, actually, I'm not sure if play daily means play chess every day or play daily chess on chess.com, which is essentially, or Lichess, which is like correspondence chess, the form where you have a very long time, like a day or multiple days to move. Well, let's just get into the second part of the question. What's the best path for me to learn and improve my game? So I would say, to echo something I said before, I think starting with tactical puzzles is a great way to sort of lay the groundwork for a study habit. Relatively straightforward, pretty fun, sort of, bite size. Most people kind of enjoy doing puzzles. So yeah, if you get a book like the Polgar Tactics for Champions or any other sort of beginning tactic, puzzle book, and just do even 15 minutes of those a day. Get out a notebook, write down your answers, open up the book. That's a great start. You definitely want to, I would definitely suggest getting an account on chess.com or Lichess if you don't have one already. Playing some live games, not too fast, not a time control that feels like where you feel overwhelmed by the speed of the games, but so maybe rapid or slow chess. If your financial situation allows it, getting a coach is a great option. Having someone to guide you is, going to be really, really helpful. For sure. And then as far as kind of general purpose beginner books, I would say don't get too many books. That can be a trap. I think Omar Chess Von Doom on which podcast was that? Maybe How to Chess his advice, having started chess relatively recently, was don't buy any books. I don't think you have to go that extreme. It's kind of fun to buy chess books, so I think it's fine. But the trap is, chess is really something you do, not something you know. So having too much books can kind of get you into that accumulating knowledge trap where you're reading more and more and more, gaining more and more knowledge. But if you're not playing and putting that into practice, you're not really going to become a more competitive chess player. So I think for sort of an starting chess book, How to Play Chess Like a Boss is a really good one. Peter Giannatos' new book, more of like a workbook style. I think it's called Everyone's First Chess Workbook, is pretty good. So either of those would be good, but maybe just pick one. Any one of those would be a great start. Don't try to do everything at once, and don't feel like you need to be working on a ton of books. Just one is enough, and even not necessarily even one is needed. Okay, what else? How do you win king plus queen versus king plus rook? I don't know if I should admit this. I don't know. I never learned that one. It's a pretty basic theoretical endgame, actually. I have never learned that one. So if I ever do get that over the board, I won't know. I'll have to try. Maybe I'll learn it right now. But I don't know. In a blitz game, I can probably just flag my opponent. But in a classical game, I guess I'd have to try to figure it out. So yeah, I can't demo that. If you do want to learn that is a great use for the computer, because, well, you can just, if you ask your friend to play the king and rook side versus your king and queen like 50 times in a row, I mean, that would have to be a pretty good friend. That's pretty boring, but the computer will do it all day. So, if you want to learn one of those theoretical endgames, you can just practice it against the computer. I think chess.com has like tutorials for those as well. Maybe slightly more generally, how important is it to know those theoretical endgames? Well, I've played a lot of chess games. I don't think I've ever had this endgame, and it's considered one of the more basic ones. So I think in terms of like expected value, it's not having a very big effect. That doesn't mean you shouldn't learn. I mean, it's not that hard to learn. It probably won't take you that long. And you can make an argument that like there's other benefits, like by learning this, you sort of learn something about the geometry of queens and rooks, which is probably true. You can build some confidence by being able to accomplish this task. So I don't think it's bad to learn, but at the same time, I think a lot of the sort of pressure to learn all these theoretical endgames comes from like some sense of like embarrassment or something. It's like a little misplaced of like, oh, if I don't know this thing that I'm supposed to know, everyone will laugh at me, which is, I don't know, maybe someone would make fun of you. But as far as maximum bang for your buck in chess study, I don't know, most of these endgames don't come up that often. I mean, king plus queen versus king, definitely know how to checkmate. King plus rook versus king, you get that one very often at a slightly more advanced level. King plus, the king and one pawn versus king, those happen pretty often on the board too. But even bishop and knight checkmate, I don't know. If you play a lifetime of tournament chess, you might have that once. So do you need to know it? I don't know. I don't think it's bad to learn it, but I don't think it's like that big of a deal either. Okay, any other questions? Okay, here I see one new one coming in. What's the worst bit of chess advice that you hear or read on a regular basis? Great question. Well, I don't know if it's the worst. One that comes to mind is like, don't study the opening as a beginner, or openings aren't important for beginners. I think what people mean when they say that is like, if you're a beginner, don't spend an enormous amount of time memorizing opening variations. And that's clearly true. That's not a good use of your time. So don't do that. But if you take that advice literally, like you don't study the opening at all, I don't think that really makes any sense either. Because like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna start the game. You're like, like, should I play h4? Should I play like knight c3? Like you have no plan for the opening. That doesn't make any sense. You want to come into the beginning of the game with some kind of sense of what you're going to do and like a level of confidence. So I think you want a little bit of an opening repertoire quite early on. Don't spend too much time on it. What I've also noticed is for a lot of beginning players, they actually spend quite a lot of time on the opening, but they still don't have like a coherent functional opening repertoire. So I would say in many cases, maybe it's more about how you study the opening rather than like whether you study the opening. Let's see, what are some other bad pieces of chess advice? I think don't play blitz. I think blitz can be actually similar story. Blitz can be a great way to learn. It can also be just kind of procrastination. You spend a lot of time and don't learn anything. So maybe the common theme here is it's less what you do and more how you do it. If you do anything thoughtfully and with focus, it's probably going to be helpful. If you do it kind of mindlessly, probably won't be very helpful. Another similar one on that is don't use the engine. Again, huge potential for abuse, for misunderstanding. At the same time, you have this tool that can instantly tell you more or less the best move at any position. That's an incredible resource. So I think not using the engine whatsoever is throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's a bit too much. It's a very powerful tool. So it's worth it to learn how to use the engine effectively to study, even if that's a little bit challenging. Okay, I think I've run out of questions for now. This was pretty last second, not a lot of production value here, but maybe we'll try it again with a little more preparation. I hope some of that was helpful.